Whoa, hey, sorry about that. My bad. Hey, gotta put this phone down. Well, if you think adults are on their phones a lot, you just wait for the kids. You're listening to Cornfield Theology. All right, everyone, let's get into it. Today's topic is going to be one of those things where it's going to impact parents, kids. It's really, what do we do with the screens? I mean, part of what brought on this particular topic is that a lot of kids are going back to school, but they're doing it online. And now they got a computer in front of their face for like 8 hours or whatever. That's in addition to, the leisure time that kids use, being in front of a screen, playing video games or whatever, surfing the web. And I think it's just a really good idea to have a conversation about what do we do with the screens? Because while they can be a bridge in terms of technology, especially right now with many kids at home doing school online, but it also creates a lot of problems. And parents in particular are not dialed in to what their kids are watching. Like, let me just back up a little bit. I am old enough to remember the day where the cell phone was like the big block that people would carry around, right? No screen, just trying to communicate with somebody else or whatever, right? No big deal. And so you didn't have access to information, through these devices. But today, kids have access to everything. And again, there's some positives to that. They're able to get information in a matter of moments, and sometimes if time is pressing, you need that's really helpful. But here's the deal: you have access to a lot of information that is really harmful, and parents need to think well about how to care for their kids. On the one hand, I could do a separate Cornfield Theology episode on how adults are using their screens, because that's a problem as well. But here I just want to focus on kids. And another reason why this kind of keeps popping up in my own head is that years ago, I used to pastor youth, and the most convicting / popular sermon that I gave was on self-control and technology. Parents always thanked me. Kids were always like, man, I really needed that. It never failed. Every year, I made sure I preached on that particular topic every single year, because I know it continues to be a problem. And it's not. And let's not be naive, parents. Screens are not going away. They're not. And so we need to think biblically about how to shepherd our own hearts, but also how to shepherd our kids. And so I think part of it is kids are being exposed way too quickly to screens. I think that's an issue. And when they're exposed too soon and they start seeing information they haven't seen before, they're having a hard time processing, and they're having a hard time processing without mom and dad in the picture. I got a 10-year-old, and my philosophy is push off cell phones as long as possible. As long as I don't think there's a magic number. Some people will say, it should be 10, should be 12, should be younger than that, should be older than that. Every kid's different, so I'm reluctant to be like it's 16 or it's 6 or whatever. Parents, you got to know your kids. That's one thing, and you got to know your family as well. If you got more than one kid, and Johnny gets his cell phone at 12, and Sally didn't get it until 13, well, there's going to be conflict, right? So you got to be aware of that. But I think there's no harm in pushing it out as long as possible. But you got to know your kids, because here's the fact of the matter: they're gonna be in front of screens whether they have a cell phone or not. They'll gravitate toward it. They're gonna find it, and you know what? They're amazing at it. The other day, I was trying to figure out something on my iPad and was in the settings. And my oldest came over to me. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just trying to figure out how to do this particular setting. I'm on the iPad or whatever." She's like, "Oh, let me do it." I mean, like, she doesn't touch my iPad. She doesn't have an iPad, but it was just intuitive to her, just because she's been exposed in other places. So that's one thing. I think pushing it off as much as possible is entirely appropriate. Parents, be mindful. I think the other thing is in conjunction with screens, whether it's a computer or an iPhone or a tablet, And all of them are used differently. Like a cell phone is used and thought of differently than a computer, right? So all the kids who are doing the school online in light of COVID, they got the computer in front of them. That's necessary. And so I think about it differently than a phone. But where they're connected is social media, right? And social media has become a replacement for being social, which is a little ironic, right? Social media, and what we see is actually people are empty. And social media has not become the replacement for getting a cup of coffee with a friend, right? It has not become the replacement at all. Now, on the one hand, it's nice to connect with people you normally would not connect with, but is social media creating depth of relationship, right? I mean, and I know it doesn't. It's good to connect with, folks from your high school from 20 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever, It's good to connect with other people across the country that you normally don't see. But that is not how you create relationships. And that's not biblical either, to think that you can create depth of a relationship through social media. I mean, that's what the church is for, but it's a little bit a different topic. And there's also dangers with social media. I think we need to be very mindful about what our kids are seeing on social media, because yes, you can go to the world wide web and view whatever you want. But with social media, people are putting things in front of your kids without even asking. Like, you go to your own Facebook page, parent, and all of a sudden you're seeing ads and you're like, I never signed up for that. I never subscribed to that. How do they know, right? Well, just think about that with your kids, even more the case. And so just trying to protect our kids from seeing things, and I'm not a bunker parent where it's like, hide them until, they're 21. That's not me at all. But I am called by God to care for them, instruct them, and to shepherd them, and to be very mindful of what they're viewing, whether they're 10 or whether they're 16 or whether they're 6, right? I'm entrusted by God to care for their souls. And so I need to be wise, and I want to be thoughtful. Well, what's the way forward when we talk about social media, right? What is the way forward? When we talk about screens as well. Well, we need wisdom from God, right? You can go to the New York Times and read an article on social media and what it's doing to our brains. You can go read an article in the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal or wherever, your local paper. We have the Des Moines Register here. And you might see articles on how social media is affecting things, how screens are affecting people's brains. You even got glasses these days that help people read on the screen. Usually I wear glasses when I read a screen because it's just so straining on my eyes. People are saying don't look at a screen, right before you go to bed. There's so much stuff. But I think at the end of the day, and all that stuff can be fine. What does God say? Now, obviously, God's word doesn't address screens and social media directly, but it gives us some wisdom of how to approach matters where, let's say, there's like a screen addiction. What does it mean to beat that? What does it mean to have self-control? What does it mean to look at something that can be good and realize, that might not be good for me? Like, look at 1 Corinthians 10, a wonderful passage. But Paul says this: all things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. That was verse 23. Now you bump down to verse 31. He continues. So whether you eat, whether you drink, or view Facebook or TikTok on your smartphone, or whatever you do all to the glory of God. A very important principle here. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. Just because you have that liberty, even that Christian liberty, doesn't mean it's healthy, right? You need to be thinking about that. Just because I can binge on like Lord of the Rings all day, let's do The Hobbit and then get into Lord of the Rings, and let's just take it from midnight to midnight. I don't know if I can cram it all in. I haven't done the math, right? Just because I could do that, technically, I don't know how I could. I don't know how I'm going to stay awake, but you get what I'm saying. Just because I can do that doesn't mean I should do that, right? If you do that, guess what happens? What are you neglecting? My wife, my kids. I'm a pastor, so I have pastoral duties that I need to attend to. I'm not saying you can't watch Lord of the Rings or watch Hobbit, but there's wisdom in how you go about these things where we have liberty, right? And so that's what God's word is calling us to. Be mindful, be thoughtful. If you're going to be given something that's a gift, and that could be even very good for you, use wisdom in how to do it. Don't let it rule over you, right? And that's what we see, even with adults and kids. It's ruling over them, and that becomes the problem. That becomes the problem. I mean, I can go on about social media and how that's ruling over people. I mean, it can be a source of information, but it also can be a vice, right? When I bought, this is how much screens are becoming a part of our culture. When I had a friend buy a new refrigerator, I was astonished at the screen that was on the fridge. Many of you might have that, right? And that's cool. They're really cool. Like I'm pro technology. Don't get me wrong. One of my favorite websites, at least historically, has been CNET, because I just love to see the innovation, right? How technology's evolved. And one thing is that we got screens on refrigerators that tell you the temperature of every all the areas in your fridge. You can FaceTime on it, or Zoom or whatever. You can play music. You can text message. You got pictures up there. You could fire a rocket from Earth from your fridge now. It's just crazy. It's really cool, right? Point being is that just screens are everywhere. Even in my office, I got my computer screen, I got your iPhone, you got your iPad, I got right around the corner here. You can't see it. It's my TV. Screens. You're watching this perhaps from a screen. They're not going anywhere. So just, I think, acknowledge it. But there's something to be said about having self-control over the screens, right? So go back to the fruits of the Spirit, perhaps, from Galatians 5. But the fruit of the Spirit is, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, right? Self-control, not phone control, not social media control, self-control. Again, going back to 1 Corinthians, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it, and you certainly shouldn't allow it to rule over you. When a person is saved, we can think about Galatians here for a moment, the Spirit will grow in that person these various characteristics, including self-control. This characteristic affirms your growth as a disciple of Jesus Christ. And so are we parents demonstrating that as well to our children, right? Am I demonstrating self-control? And again, I'm just dialing in on your phone, your laptop, your tablet, and social media. Are you demonstrating that kind of self-control to your kids? And I get it. It's hard, right? Like when I get done recording this video, I'll pick up my phone and I'll probably receive multiple messages, multiple emails in the short time. We're more connected than ever, more accessible to each other than ever because of the phone. Again, there's good and there's bad. But the question is, do I need to look at it the moment I get done with this video? Right? Do I need to jump on Facebook the moment this video is over? I think not. So I'm going to get more into the kids here in a moment, but I just want to put the principles together here from 1 Corinthians and then also Galatians. Here's how the string of principles work. All Christians are called to do all things for the glory of God, right? That's the 1 Corinthians 10:31. That's number one. One way in which we're able to live to the glory of God is to live the self-controlled life. We got that with the fruits of the Spirit, for example. And there might be no greater need to live a self-controlled life than with technology. So live to the glory of God, and the way that we can do that is live the self-controlled life. And in particular, there's no greater need, perhaps, than to live the self-controlled life with the technology we have right in front of us. This reminds me of a proverb. I've been going through Proverbs recently. It's amazing to go through it, and it's just how practical it is. It's just wisdom for the daily life. It's a very black and white book in the sense of this is right, this is wrong. It's like slapping you with the obvious over and over and over and over again. It's quite refreshing right now, especially in a world of chaos. Well, here's a proverb, 25:28. A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. So here that is again. A man without self-control, a man or woman without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. Here is what this particular proverb is saying. Imagine you live in a castle, right? My mind, whenever I think about castle, my mind goes to England, just like you're watching the BBC and, they got all those programming of 16th, 17th, 18th century England or whatever. That's where my mind goes to anyways. So you live in that particular castle, and surrounding the entire castle is a wall. Why is the wall there? The wall is there to protect you who live in the castle and the other individuals in the castle, right? So it keeps the enemy who's in the outside from getting into the castle. So that's the purpose of the wall is very simple, to keep the enemy out of the castle. But without the wall surrounding the castle, you are susceptible to attack, and it's likely the enemy will eventually take control of your castle, right? So think about how this applies to your life. You want to protect your heart, right? You want to protect your life by putting up the wall of self-control around you. So think about how this applies now to social media and screens, right? What are we doing to protect ourselves? So here's one thing parents do, and I think this is a good thing, is kids are using screens more and more. They'll use things to monitor their kids in a way to like protect their lives, right? Parents want to know what they're going to. There's certain things where you can shut off the screens like at 8 p.m. or whatever. You can turn them on for an hour between 5 and 6, whatever. I don't know. And those are good things. Those are good steps. And so parents need to do that. Parents also need to model that for their kids. And I would also add this, and I think this is more just parenting awareness. Parents, it's good that you would be doing that, and you should do that. But your kids know how to get around that as well. Now, it might shock you. Again, going back to my time in youth, countless stories of how youth were being monitored by their parents, but they knew kind of the gate. they knew how to break through the firewall, which means this, and I think that's true. That doesn't mean all kids do that. Be very mindful of that. But the kids can do that. They're smarter than you think, especially when it comes to using technology, social media. You need to have an open and honest dialogue with your kids about what they're seeing, what they're engaged in, who are their friends on social media. It's one thing for Johnny to invite, Brian over to the house and play, and parents are there. Parents are interacting with, his friend Brian and getting to know him or whatever. Well, why don't we think about that when it comes to our kids' interaction on social media, right? Like sometimes there's even more power and influence through a social media friend, right? Whether it's on TikTok or Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, right? Those are the four big ones that come to my mind. I know there's other ones that exist as well. But why aren't we mindful of that? Parents, you got to talk to your kids if they're on social media. You need to talk to your kids about what they're viewing on the World Wide Web. So that is the encouragement for parents watching or listening to this. Get involved, be engaged. Don't think that if your kids go to school that your teacher's going to help do that. No, it's on you. And if you need help, talk to a friend. In our local church, we believe that community and discipleship. So we want parents talking to each other. We want younger parents talking to older parents. We want older parents talking to younger parents. We believe we can help each other. We want to create a culture of community and discipleship in our local church to wrestle through things like this, exactly like this. Another word I want to share, and then I'll kind of land the plane here. I said it already. It's worth saying again. Your kids are being exposed to more than you realize. And so pushing off, I think it's a good thing. I don't think there's any harm in pushing off screens as much as possible. Again, I understand how points are necessary. If kids are home alone, they need a phone. We don't have a landline here, so we can come to a point in our house where we may need to give a cell phone just for the sake of safety. I get all those mitigating factors. But the more you can push the screens off and the access to the information, the better. Because they're going to get it no matter what. They're going to get it at school. They're going to get it from their friends. And I understand there's going to be tension and friction. My kids' friends got a phone when they were 10, but my parents are making me wait till I'm, age whatever. Well, that's called parenting. That's called engaging your kids, helping them understand why. Doesn't mean it goes well, but it means that you're actually caring for them, even when they don't think you're caring for them, right? Like, you actually know what's best if you're parenting in a way that's godly and biblical. And then it's also engaging into a dialogue with your kids. There's actually opportunities for mutual understanding, right? And to help your kid grow in understanding the world and some of the values that we read about in Scripture. So these aren't wasted moments. Parents, don't be afraid of the discussion, but actually be willing to have the discussion and look forward to the discussion. So I'm not anti-screen. I'm pro-parental awareness when it comes to screens. Well, that's a short one, so I'm going to end there. I hope that was helpful. We're going to have some more Cornfield Theology episodes coming out here in the future. And with that said, just remember 1 Corinthians 10, the fruits of the Spirit from Galatians 5, and then also Proverbs 25:28. A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. Parents, we want to care for our kids in such a way where we keep that wall up. Well, that's it for now. God bless. Take care. And until next time, this is Cornfield Theology.